how do we actually structure? Well, there are a couple of key things to keep in mind. Number one, objective, objective, objective. Nothing is more important than the objective. You can have the best answer in the world, but if you're answering the wrong question, you have the wrong answer. So, number one, before you framework, before you brainstorm, before you create any type of structure, make sure you are crystal clear on the objective. What are we being brought in for? What is the question being asked? What do we have to solve? Now, there are two types of objectives for the most part in every case. There's the primary objective, which is the literal question you're being asked. Do we do this? Do we not do this? How do we do this? Etc. The literal question, the question we are here to answer and solve for, is the primary objective. But most cases and most case prompts have a secondary objective. And this is essentially, what does good look like? What are our clients' goals, needs, wants, desires? So in trying to grow, are we trying to grow revenues? Are we trying to grow profits? Do we have a specific target? In trying to do X thing, what are we really trying to achieve? That is what a secondary objective is. Make sure that you are clear on both the primary objective in a case and the secondary objective, the client's goals, needs, wants, desires, before you try and dive into the framework itself. In addition, when you are creating your framework, remember that a case is really just a mini project, and therefore a framework is a mini project plan. Everything you are doing is a miniaturized, a condensed version of a real life project. And your framework is ultimately you creating the plan of attack. It is your approach to solving the problem. So think of your buckets as work streams. Think of each section of your framework being something that you would assign to individual A or team A that they would have to go and run off and complete on their own. They should be able to work independently. They have a sort of mini question that has to be answered. And what has been broken out is clear in terms of what they need to go do. And then all of these work streams or teams, once they're done, can be put together to solve the problem. Just remember, when we're creating our framework, it's really about creating a project plan. It is not solving the problem. It's your approach to solving the problem. It's that whiteboarding session that you have before the project to figure out what are we actually going to do and how. Thirdly, why, what, and how. As you go through your framework, as you articulate it, start off by signposting or summarizing each bucket with a sort of why statement. State what you want to look at, and what I want to hear is sort of the goal, the mini objective of each bucket in a succinct sentence. After you're done signposting, you should go into each bucket. And as you go through them, you have substructure and you're articulating the what and the how. What are you going to look at and how is it going to answer the question? So again, you signpost your buckets with a sort of summary sentence of what they're about. And then as you dive into each one, after you've signposted, you break out the what and the how. Of course, you're going to have plenty of practice on this. But nothing is more important than remembering the objective, being clear on the question, creating a real project plan, a plan of attack for solving the problem, and then clearly articulating the what, the why, and the how. Now, as already mentioned, a framework is a project plan. So what does this mean? Well, think about the prompt as your project intro. So this is the project description that you get. This is the intro call that you have with the client. It might be your boss calling you on Friday or Saturday or Sunday in preparation for your new project. It could be the request for proposal or your pitch deck. It is essentially the context that you're getting for the project that you're about to operate. So what I really want you to do when you're thinking about frameworking is almost reflect on your current role. If you're currently a consultant or you currently manage products or if you currently manage projects, or even if you've ever been on a team that had to come to a solution, ultimately the first step was always understanding what's going on here, right? What are we being brought in for? As such, think about your clarifying questions as that initial client meeting, right? This is where when you're on the call with your boss or your client or reading through the pitch deck, these are the questions that you're asking to just really understand what you're doing, right? What are we here for? The best clarifying questions are those that answer what you don't understand, that help you understand the context and the box that we're operating in. Ultimately, think about it as what you need to ask in order to go into another room and whiteboard what your approach, what your work streams are going to look like, what you're going to do in week 1, 2, and 3, right? These are the questions you have to ask to get clear on why are we here. And finally, as already mentioned, the framework itself is the result of these questions, the result of the prompt that you're getting. Every work stream essentially has to have a goal of its own purpose. Every work stream should be able to work independently of the other, but together added up, the problem can be solved. And this is the same as a framework. Bucket A, bucket B, bucket C, they each have to have a point. They're this larger theme. They are independent of each other and can really be addressed without too much overlap. And together they're going to solve your problem. That's essentially what MECE means. That is what mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive means. This is a easier way to think about it than lumping 4 large words together, right? So instead of MECE, really think of it as a project plan. There is another way that you can think about this, either because you haven't really had a project before in terms of work experience, or just because this is an easier way to look at it. But think of a framework as your essay or thesis for like an English class. What do I mean by this? Well, think about the prompt as your teacher or professor assignment, right? They say, okay, class, you have 2 weeks and I want you to write 2 pages about the Odyssey, right? That's your prompt. That's what you're tasked with doing. That's your objective, right? That's the situation that you're in. Your clarifying questions are going to be you going to the teacher and saying, okay, wait, what exactly are we supposed to write on, right? Is there any particular character that we need to focus on? Is there a theme? Is there anything off limits, right? It would be kind of silly to say, do you want it double spaced or single spaced? Or what font do you want? Or do you want us to label our pages? Or, kind of asking all of these little random questions. Do you want us to write an essay on pages 59 to 72, right? Rather, your clarifying questions are going to be about asking things that are going to help you really get clearer on what's required from you. So for an essay or thesis, this is you going up to the teacher and saying, wait, we can just write about anything on the Odyssey, or is there a particular scope here? And then finally, your framework is your plan for the essay. Let's imagine your teacher said, you are not allowed to start writing until you've given me your plan. What are you planning to write about, and what is your essay going to be? Right? That can be your project plan. That can be your framework, right? That is your plan for the essay. So a bad plan to bring to the teacher would be, okay, so number 1, I'm going to go and read the book. Number 2, I'm going to go and think about what I want to write about. Number 3, I'm going to go and write about it. And number 4, I'm going to go edit it, right? That's process. Of course, that's what you're going to do. Rather, your framework needs to be your approach to solving the problem, right? This is your approach to writing the essay. So a much better framework that you would propose to your teacher in order to write this essay would be, well, I want to talk about how Odysseus became a man throughout the Odyssey, how he started off as a boy and really matured and grew up and became his own man. And I want to do this by demonstrating 3 main things. Number 1, I want to assess and analyze and talk through how his actions demonstrated that he was becoming a man. He did things that showed ownership and responsibility. Words are one thing, but he took actions to show this development. And the second thing I want to talk through and prove is, the way he views the world. I want to analyze his thoughts and look at how his view of the world has evolved and changed throughout the Odyssey and started to mature. And finally, externally, I want to look at the people around Odysseus and how, one, he treated them, and also how they treated him. How do they view him, and how do they see him as he matures throughout the Odyssey? Do you see how those are all separate topics? But as you put them together, they're going to answer the question of, did Odysseus become a man? So keep all of this in mind as you start to framework, whether it's looking at this as a project plan or looking at this like an essay. Your framework is fundamentally the major themes you need to look at, modularized and grouped up, separate from each other in a way that when you put them together, they are going to answer the question. We're going to practice this plenty. And by the end of this should all be very clear. But this is a great place to start for you to become a structuring and frameworking master.